The first blink came at 3:07 am. 3 quick flashes tearing through the fog like the heartbeat of a dead thing. Mara Fenn sat upright in her narrow bunk aboard the ferry, eyes drawn to the black silhouette of Blackstrand Island. The old lighthouse stood there, a fractured tooth against the storm horizon, its light cutting the dark where no electricity should still breathe. "That's impossible," she whispered to no one, her breath fogging the cabin glass. The radio crackled. A voice, or perhaps static shaped like one. The sea pressed closer, whispering her name as if it already knew she'd come. By the time the ferry scraped against the dock, the light blinked once more. Slower this time, deliberate, as if acknowledging her arrival. The storm had quieted by dawn, leaving the island shrouded in a breathless stillness. Mara trudged up the narrow path from the dock, boots sinking into mud, her satchel heavy with notebooks and salt. The lighthouse loomed above like a monument to exhaustion, its iron ribs groaning faintly in the wind. She reached the keeper's cottage, a house so warped with rot it seemed to lean toward her, listening. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of brine and mildew. Every object, an overturned chair, a cracked teacup, a broken clock, felt frozen mid-gesture, as if someone had simply dissolved out of time. When she found the journal on the kitchen table, she hesitated. Its leather cover was blackened, waterlogged, and pulsing faintly under her fingertips, as if it remembered being touched before. Elias Corrin, she read from the spine, her voice echoing through the hollow room. The last keeper. The cottage door creaked open as if exhaling after years of silence. Dust motes drifted in a single shaft of light piercing through the boarded window. Mara set her bag down and walked slowly through the parlor. The air tasted of rust and the faint sweetness of decay. She traced a finger across a framed photograph on the mantel. A man in uniform beside the lighthouse, his smile uneasy. "Elias," she whispered. A sound replied. The faintest tap, 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 tap from upstairs, like someone pacing with a limp. The sound stopped the moment she looked up. Her heart pounded as she took a step toward the stairs. Then from the kitchen came a single drop of water landing on wood, a steady rhythm, unnatural in its precision, leading her to the journal. The journal's first page was damp, but the ink had not faded. It began with precision, a log more than a confession. September 2nd, it read. The sea has gone quiet. The light burns, though the generator sleeps. Mara turned the page, finding entries written in increasingly erratic lines. Some words carved so deep the paper tore. It watches from the deep. One line read, "The beam is its eye. I only keep it open." A shiver traced her spine. Wind moaned through the cracks in the cottage. But the rhythm of that sound, slow, patient, deliberate, seemed to match the blinking of the lighthouse outside. She set the journal down and walked to the window. The beam swept over the sea, paused midway, and for a heartbeat looked straight back at her. That night, the sea began to whisper again. Mara couldn't sleep. The journal rested on the table beside her camp lantern, its pages fluttering, though there was no breeze. She recorded a few notes of her own. Light pattern irregular. Possible malfunction, though power source unknown. The lantern dimmed, then brightened, mirroring the lighthouse beam outside. She rose, heart pounding, and crossed to the window. The light blinked once, twice, then again, 3 times. The exact same rhythm as before. 3:07 a.m. The storm had returned only in the sky. Thunder rolled far off, like something laughing underwater. She backed away from the window, whispering, "Who's keeping it now?" But in the silence that followed, only the journal answered, its cover lifting, closing, like a slow, wet breath. Morning brought no sun, only a heavy pall of mist pressing close to the windows. Mara boiled a tin of coffee over her portable stove and laid the journal open across the table like a relic, demanding reverence. The handwriting shifted as she read, orderly entries giving way to jagged scrawls, as if Elias Corrin had written through sleepless delirium. "It calls to me, One page read. When the light blinks, I hear the tide inside my head. The ink had bled in places, forming shapes that almost resembled faces in the margins. Mara traced them with the edge of her thumb, feeling the faint emboss beneath the paper. She began to copy his words into her notebook, but her pen paused when she noticed her own handwriting trembling, each stroke vibrating slightly, as though the island itself was writing through her. The next entry began as a log of maintenance, Elias's neat script detailing lens repairs, wick trimming and weather readings, until a note scrawled in the margin broke the rhythm. The sea hums in the walls. Mara frowned, reading. On 1. When I sleep, the light keeps watch. When I wake, it turns itself. She flipped another page, breath catching at a pressed flower brittle with age, sealed between paragraphs like a gravestone. In the corner, Elias had drawn a small circle with a line through it, an ancient mariner's symbol for a star that no longer guides. The sea beyond the window lapped gently, but each wave struck the rocks with the same repeating cadence. 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats. The island was answering him, or her. By midday, Mara had moved to the lighthouse itself. The door protested her entry with a sound like a long exhale. Inside, everything reeked of rust and old oil. The spiral stairs wound upward into shadows, their iron rail slick beneath her hand. Every footstep echoed as though the tower breathed around her. Near the base, she found another of Elias's logbooks, this one water-damaged beyond comprehension. "Why keep so many?" she murmured. The interior air felt charged, almost electric. When she reached the lamp room, the lantern was shattered exactly as photographs had shown, yet a glow still pulsed faintly within its heart, steady as a heartbeat. She touched the cold metal, and somewhere deep below, the sea answered with a groan that shook the glass. She set her recorder down on the metal floor and began speaking softly. Field Note 3. Anomalous luminescence persists within the central housing. No visible power source. The light flickered as she spoke, responding like a heartbeat quickening. Possible phosphorescence or residual charge, she added, though she knew that was nonsense. The journal lay open beside her, and a page she hadn't yet reached fluttered on its own. The words bled upward through the paper, new and fresh, as if being written from beneath. "You are seen." The wind outside howled suddenly, pressing the walls inward. Mara lunged for the recorder, but her own voice crackled through it, repeating her words back, delayed, distorted, whispering the final line with an unfamiliar accent. That night, Mara listened to the recording again inside the cottage. The voice that echoed through the static wasn't hers. It was a man's, steady, weary, filled with salt and distance. "Keep it open," the voice murmured. "Don't let it close." She froze, pulse hammering. The next sound was the unmistakable creak of boots on the floorboards behind her. She turned, whispering, "Elias." The air shimmered faintly near the doorway, a distortion like heat over stone. Then the light blinked through the window, once, twice, 3 times, and the voice from the recorder spoke again softly. "I never left." The boundary between reading and dreaming dissolved that night. Mara awoke at her desk, cheek against the open journal, its pages still warm beneath her skin. For a moment, she thought the storm outside had changed direction. But then she realized it wasn't storm at all. It was the slow, deliberate rhythm of the turning lens above, echoing through the island like a heart trapped in glass. She lifted her head, blinking through the haze of sleep, and found her reflection in the window replaced by another face. A man's, half-shadowed, eyes hollow, yet intent. She gasped, stepping back. But the face moved with her, whispering from the other side of the pane. "You shouldn't have read past the second entry." The voice was low, kind almost, before fading into the sound of distant waves. When she looked again, only her reflection remained, but her eyes were no longer her own. Morning came gray and silent, Mara felt different, her thoughts heavier, her breathing slow, synchronized with the rhythm of the surf. The journal lay open on a new page she didn't remember turning to. The entry was written in her own handwriting, dated that very morning. He watches through the light. She stared at it, unable to recall writing those words. A faint humming vibrated in the air around her, building until the oil lamp on the table trembled. She rose, eyes drawn to the window, where the beam swept across the sea. For the briefest moment, she saw Elias standing on the outer gallery of the lighthouse, coat snapping in the wind. He looked up at her, smiled faintly, and vanished, leaving only the sound of the sea exhaling like a living thing. She climbed the lighthouse again that afternoon, driven by a pull she could neither resist nor name. The spiral steps felt shorter this time, as if the tower welcomed her. And at the top she found the shattered lens perfectly intact, whole again, gleaming like crystal. "You fixed yourself," she whispered. A voice, low and familiar, answered from within the light. Someone had to. Mara's breath caught. The glow intensified, and she saw within it the faint image of Elias, standing where she stood, tending the flame. Their motions mirrored perfectly. When she reached out to touch the glass, her reflection overlapped with his. For an instant they were one, keeper and witness, past and present, until the beam blinked and the illusion shattered with a crack that echoed like thunder. When Mara awoke, she was on the floor of the lantern room, the beam turning lazily above her. Her watch read 3:07 a.m. She remembered climbing in daylight, but outside it was night again. The air was cold, wet. The journal lay open beside her, pages rustling, though there was no wind. September 9th, the entry read, "I am no longer alone. She walks the island now, as I once did." The ink was fresh. Mara pressed her fingertips to the page, still damp. She stumbled to her feet, panic clawing up her throat, and looked through the shattered window toward the shore. On the beach below, a figure stood holding a lantern, its glow faint but steady. When she whispered, "Elias," the light blinked 3 times in reply. The journal no longer waited for her to open it. It whispered. At first faintly, murmurs beneath her breathing. But by the next evening, the voice was clear, measured, speaking from within the pages. "You see now," it said, "the light never sleeps. Nor do I." Mara sat motionless, the room dim except for her small lamp. "What are you?" she asked aloud. "What's in the sea?" The voice laughed softly, though the sound was hollow. "Not what's in it," it said. "What belongs to it?" Her hands trembled as she turned the page. There, ink still glistening, were the words, "You do, Mara. You always have." The following night brought no wind, no waves, only the immense hush of the ocean holding its breath. Mara couldn't bring herself to sleep. The journal lay open on her lap, its words shimmering faintly in the lamplight as if written in salt. "Show me," she whispered to it, uncertain why. The room grew colder. The sound of dripping water filled the air, though nothing leaked. When she looked down, droplets beaded along the spine of the book, trickling across her fingers, leaving trails that tasted of the sea. Her pulse slowed, heart sensing with a rhythm that wasn't her own. A sound rose from beyond the cliffs, a low hum, deep and resonant, vibrating the windows in their frames. She stepped outside without realizing it, drawn toward the light that blinked in perfect time with the beating in her chest. The path to the lighthouse seemed shorter now, as if the island itself shifted to ease her passage. Her boots splashed through puddles that reflected stars where clouds had been moments before. When she reached the tower's base, she found the door already ajar. The air inside was thick and humming, the metal stairs faintly vibrating under her hand. "Elias," she called softly, the sound absorbed by the dark. A faint voice drifted downward. "You came back." The timbre was unmistakable. Neither ghost nor echo, but living memory given sound. She climbed, breath quick and shallow, until she saw him waiting near the lantern, eyes luminous as the light itself. "You were never supposed to follow me," he said gently. "But now that you have, you must see what we keep." When she reached the lantern room, the glow was blinding. Elias turned toward the glass, his outline wavering like heat haze. "This light was never meant to guide ships," he murmured. "It was built to hold them back." Mara shielded her eyes. The sea below rippled, though the air was still, and deep within its black heart, something vast moved, a silhouette the size of the cliffs themselves. "It stirs when the beam falters," he continued. "Every keeper swore to keep it watching, to keep it open." Mara's voice trembled. "What is it?" He smiled, sorrow shadowing his face. "What remembers us?" The light dimmed then, just slightly, and from the water below came the sound of something awakening. The lighthouse shuddered. Glass cracked above them as the beam flickered, fading for the briefest instant. Elias gripped the railing. "Do you feel it?" he asked, shouting above the low rumble rising from below. Mara nodded, though she didn't know how. Her pulse echoed the same rhythm as the light. 3 blinks, a pause. The floor trembled again, and suddenly she saw through the shifting glass hundreds of pale shapes beneath the waves. Faces looking up, mouths open in eternal silence. "The lost," Elias whispered. "They wait for the light to fail." A chill ran through her as realization dawned. The journal hadn't been warning her. It had been training her. The next keeper must always answer the call. When the shaking stopped, Elias looked at her with quiet resignation. "The light needs a keeper," he said simply, "and I've burned too long." The glow from the lens dimmed to a soft heartbeat of light. "I can't hold it anymore." Mara stared at him, her voice barely audible. "You mean it has to have someone?" He nodded. "It must never close." Outside, the sea began to rise, climbing the rocks like a living tide. She reached for him, but her hand passed through his shoulder. "You already took the vow," he said gently, "the moment you opened the journal." The light blinked once more, steady, then slower, and she felt something inside her shift, aligning, accepting. "Keep it open," he whispered. "Keep it alive." Then he was gone, leaving only the steady turning of the lens, and the sea whispering her name. Dawn crept pale and colorless across the island, but the lighthouse beams still turned, slow and steady. Mara sat against the cold iron wall of the lantern room, Elias's absence heavy as gravity. The journal lay open beside her, its pages drying in the soft wind that slipped through the broken glass. Each entry now appeared in her own hand, written as she watched. "The keeper must not leave the island," the ink formed, "for the light binds her." She stared at the words until they blurred. The sea below was still, the faces beneath its skin gone. "So it's me," she whispered. The lens turned, its light brushing across her features like a gentle touch. And for the first time she understood what Elias meant. This wasn't a curse. It was an inheritance older than the land itself. She descended the tower that afternoon, the air dense with salt and quiet expectation. At the base she found the old mechanism that once powered the lens. Rusted gears, a crank half submerged in seawater from decades of storms. Yet as she touched it, the machine groaned awake, trembling beneath her hand. She turned it slowly, and the light above responded in rhythm, pulsing brighter. Each rotation filled her with a strange calm, a certainty. In the silence between pulses, faint whispers rose from the sea, fragments of language she didn't know but somehow understood. "We remember you," they said. "We see through you." Her pulse merged with the rhythm, her body an extension of the beam itself. The lighthouse was alive again, and she was its pulse. That night, the journal spoke again. no longer in a stranger's voice but her own. The sea does not forget. It wrote as her hand moved without her consent. Each keeper becomes its witness. Mara's eyes filled with tears she couldn't explain. The voices outside grew louder, rising with the tide. When she stepped onto the cliffs, the ocean glowed faintly, as though 1,000 eyes blinked beneath the surface. The beam swept across them, and they stilled. The weight of centuries pressed upon her shoulders, yet it felt right, almost sacred. "I'll keep it," she said aloud, her voice steady. "I keep it open." The wind stilled as if in approval behind her. The lighthouse turned once more, slower, calmer, like a breath released after long holding. The following days blurred into one another. Time lost meaning. Mara tended the lighthouse as if she had done so all her life, winding the mechanism, polishing the glass, recording the blink sequence in her notebook. The foghorn below had long fallen silent, yet she could hear it in her dreams, low and rhythmic, guiding unseen ships through unseen storms. One morning, while cleaning the lens, she saw Elias's reflection again. He stood behind her, calm, proud. "It suits you," he said. "You listen better than I ever did." Mara smiled faintly. "You stayed too long. And now you will too," he replied. "But the sea will love you for it." Then he was gone again, dissolving into the light he once tended. On the 5th night, Mara dreamed she was beneath the water. The light from the tower pierced the depths, illuminating vast ruins scattered across the ocean floor. Broken bells, ships turned to coral, statues eroded into faceless watchers. Between them moved the immense shadow she had seen before, slow and graceful. It turned one eye toward her, vast as a storm, and she felt no fear. Instead, a calm certainty washed through her. The sea was not her prison, it was her charge. When she awoke, her hair and clothes were damp with salt water. The journal lay open beside her pillow, the ink still drying. The keeper dreams beneath the waves, but the light above never dies. It began with a sound, low, distant, like thunder rolling beneath the seabed. Mara stood at the lantern room window, staring into a horizon that had vanished. The fog was alive again, curling in unnatural spirals that pulsed with faint light. The journal trembled on the table, its pages fluttering though the air was still. "It's waking," she whispered, though she didn't know how she knew. Lightning flashed deep inside the mist, illuminating colossal shapes beneath the waves. The beam faltered, just once, and the entire island seemed to exhale. The lighthouse groaned, the metal bones of it shuddering. Mara clutched the railing, her pulse racing to the same rhythm as the storm. The sea had come to claim what was promised. The light, the keeper, the memory of both. The power within the tower pulsed erratically. Sparks leapt from the old control board as the mechanism seized. Mara ran her hands across the worn metal levers, desperate to keep the lens turning. "Stay with me," she begged the light. The floor trembled as waves slammed against the cliffs, spraying salt through the cracks in the window frame. Then she heard it, a voice carried on the wind, deeper than the storm. "Keeper," it said. "The eye must close." Mara shook her head violently. "No," she shouted. "If it closes, everything beneath wakes." The voice laughed, a sound like collapsing waves. "It wakes either way, child of the shore." The journal fell from the table, landing open at a blank page that began to write itself in water. The beam blinked twice, hesitated, then resumed. Mara turned in time to see a pale figure forming in the light. Elias, his eyes calm, his mouth shaped in warning. "It's not the sea you should fear," he said. "It's what remembers through it." She reached toward him, tears mingling with salt spray. "You said it could be contained." His expression softened with sorrow. "Not forever, only passed on." The storm outside roared louder, and the tower shook. "Then take it back," she pleaded. He only smiled faintly. It doesn't want me anymore. It wants the living. His image flickered and vanished, leaving the lens to spin faster, light bleeding into every shadow. Water surged up the cliffs, pouring through the lower floors of the tower. The journal floated at Mara's feet, glowing from within like a lantern. She bent to pick it up, and the moment her fingers touched the cover, a vision flooded her mind. Dozens of keepers before her, each one standing where she stood, each one whispering the same words to the sea. Stay below. The images came faster. Storms, shipwrecks, silent eyes beneath the waves, all ending the same way. The beam flickering, the keeper vanishing, the journal waiting for the next hand to open it. No, she whispered, not this time. She pressed her palms to the cold glass of the lens, forcing the light to burn brighter until her reflection began to dissolve. The island vanished beneath the storm. Lightning split the horizon as the sea rose higher, but the lighthouse remained, its light now a steady, blinding flare, piercing the chaos. Inside, Mara stood before the lens, her face serene amid the thunder. If it wants the living, she whispered, then I'll stay living inside the light. The tower convulsed as the beam steadied, then exploded outward, flooding the sea with radiance. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. The wind, the waves, even the rain hung motionless in the air. Then the shadows beneath the ocean folded inward, sinking into the depths. When the storm cleared, the lighthouse stood silent, its lens cracked but glowing faintly from within, just enough to blink once at 3:07 a.m. Morning came to Blackstrand Island as though the storm had never been. The sea was still. The sky washed clean. A thin mist drifted across the cliffs, soft as breath. The lighthouse stood unmarred, its beam faint but constant, turning in calm defiance of silence. Inside, the air carried the scent of salt and candle smoke. The journal rested open on the table, its last entry written in perfect, steady hand. The light remains. Far out on the horizon, a fishing vessel passed, and its captain swore later that he saw a woman standing in the lantern room bathed in gold. He waved. She did not. The beam blinked once, slow and deliberate. Those who watched from the shore said it almost looked like an answer. Days turned to weeks, though the island no longer marked them. The light burned on without power, steady and patient. A salvage crew arrived from the mainland to inspect the ruins of the keeper's cottage, now half swallowed by the earth. Among the debris, they found the journal sealed inside a tin box, its cover dry, its ink unspoiled. The last page bore no date, only a message written in unfamiliar script. To the next who dreams the sea, keep it open. One of the men laughed. Closing the book. Old ghost stories, he said. But that night, aboard their vessel, he woke to find the light blinking across the waves 3 times. A pause. 3 times again. And in the distance, the faint echo of a woman's voice carried by the tide. In the lantern room, Mara's presence had become more light than flesh. She no longer needed to wind the gears. They turned at her thought. She could feel the pulse of the sea below, vast and quiet now, the thing beneath sleeping once more. But sometimes when the wind shifted, she heard Elias's voice, soft, approving. You kept it open. She would smile faintly and answer, it's not mine anymore, it's theirs. Outside, gulls circled lazily through beams of light, unaware that every blink they passed through was her heartbeat, echoing in rhythm with the ocean. She was not trapped. She was home. Years later, new storms would come, but none could extinguish the light. Sailors spoke of it as a blessing, the eternal eye that warned them from the rocks. Yet, those who dared land on Blackstrand found the lighthouse door locked from the inside, though no one ever answered their calls. Some swore that when they pressed an ear to the metal, they heard the sound of waves whispering in words. Others claimed they saw movement through the glass, a woman's figure tending the flame. None stayed past nightfall, for as the clock struck 3:07, the beam always blinked 3 times, pausing in that patient rhythm, as if waiting for someone to remember. Centuries later, when the island finally eroded to stone and salt, the lighthouse still stood. The sea claimed the cottage, the rocks, the soil, but not the light. Beneath the waves, ruins shimmered with faint luminescence, and far below, in the dark cradle of the ocean, a single heartbeat pulsed like distant thunder. The journal drifted through the depths, pages unspoiled, words still legible. On the final page, a message appeared, fresh as breath. The light never dies. It only waits to be found. Above, in the eternal dusk between storm and calm, the lighthouse blinked once more. Slow, deliberate, like the closing of an ancient eye finally at peace.